So, okay, so welcome everybody. My name is Dr. Lori Pitts. I am the owner and founder of Still Whole Wellness. I am also on the admin team for Incest Aware. I also currently am the executive director for SAN, and I'm just super excited to be here with you guys. So if you missed the last Outspoken series panel, you really missed a really great time. We had some amazing conversation. I'd like to say that we had some really great insights and just kind of wonderful nuggets of wisdom that were given during the last panel. So I'm very much looking forward to that same experience happening today. So before we kind of get into that, what I'd like to do is just give you a brief introduction to Incest Aware and who we are and what we do, what we're all about. And hopefully technology will be on my side today. Here we go. Okay, so Incest Aware, who we are. Okay, so this particular Outspoken series, we're focusing on Black incest survivors, and today we're going to specifically talk about the family disclosure, which is something we know, is something that's very important. We're going to talk about what Incest Aware is. We're going to give invitation for self-care because today we are going to be talking about some pretty, heavy, emotionally heavy topics. Okay, we're going to then also open it up for the panel to offer an introduction of themselves. Then we'll have that panel discussion. And then, of course, at the end, we'll open it up for questions and answers. So, Incest Aware, we bring the topics of incest back into the mainstream public, and we do this through disclosures, right? We provide community-based solutions for incest prevention, very important for us, okay? And we provide interventions and recovery for justice. That is our goal of Incest Aware. Here are some of the wonderful people and organizations that make up our alliance. If that is something that you maybe yourself are wanting to become involved in, we would totally welcome that. We can definitely give you guys the Incest Aware email and get you in contact with Joe, who is our fearless leader, to be able to make that happen. It's important for us to stay connected. We can't do this work by ourselves. Honestly, we cannot do this work by ourselves. This is such a huge issue that just spans across the globe, unfortunately. And so we need people. We need people to kind of stand with us. And so if you're wanting to be a part of that alliance, again, just let me know and we can have Joe reach out to you and get you that information. You can also sign up for our newsletter. There is an amazing monthly newsletter that goes out. Would love for you to be able to take part in that and get involved in that. There's also opportunities even with that newsletter to submit blog posts, which hopefully I will have one there soon. Again, my name is Dr. Lori, and if you are wanting to get in contact with Joe specifically, here is her email here. So Incest Aware, we address incest as well as racism, content, and invitation, okay? Here is the sexual assault hotline, and here is also the Incest Aware website if you would like to go to the website to just kind of get more information on our services and what it is that Incest Aware is all about. All right, so the big thank you. Okay, so now I want to invite our panel to kind of introduce themselves. So we're kind of short in numbers tonight. We had a couple of people that were going to join us on the panel, but I know one individual, she had a death in the family, and so she was unable to attend, but that's okay. That is absolutely okay. Who is here is who is meant to be here, right? Right. Okay, so I'm going to go just at the top of my screen. I see Dr. Vanessa Guyton. Um, I see her there first. So Dr. Guyton, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Vanessa. People call me Dr. Vanessa, Dr. Vanessa Guyton, and I am a survivor of military sexual trauma and a whole lot of other stuff, right? But that's the reason why I founded an organization called Hush No More. Hush No More supports survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, child sexual abuse, incest, human trafficking, all of those hush topics that families and organizations and communities have a hard time discussing. That is what I do. So I'm a proud advocate, and I am proud to be here today.
Yes, yes. And we're so grateful for all of the amazing work that you do, Dr. G. Dr. Guyton and we met I think during the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. And we've been like attached ever since. Ever since we've been attached. This is like one of my greatest friends at this moment, and she's just a wealth of information and always has something very positive, and very insightful to add to any conversation that she's a part of. So again, welcome, Dr. G. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank
And
you.
then
One day we're going to meet in person. We haven't met in person
look,
yet.
I have, from your mouth to God's ears, I'm telling you there, but you're not the only one. Like I see two other faces here that we've connected virtually, and I consider them like y'all, all of y'all, like my virtual sisters, but we've yet to meet in person. So I look forward to the day, child. I look forward to the day. Uh, and then of course we have Miss Shirkydra Roberts. Blessings, Kedra.
Blessings. Hey, y'all. I've been at the high school doing the curriculum today, so I got a lot of energy poured into the youth today. We did a full curriculum with JROTC, the athletic department, and just talk mental health and leadership and making the right choices. So I'm Shirkydra Roberts. I do a lot of speaking, but my main thing is advocating for mental health and being a victor of child sexual abuse and learning that there is life of purpose after trauma. So really, as a coach, as a speaker, it's about, we can't always control what happened to us, but once it happened to us, we can control how we respond to it. So just living a life on purpose, So I'm happy to be here, happy to see everybody. I really appreciate all of you and just what you're doing and just the energy, watching you guys, like just the energy you pour into a space that is irrelevant for many, but needed for much. So
Yes.
just thank you guys for the sacrifice. I really appreciate you allowing me to be a part of this. So.
Absolutely. Keisha, we feel the same way about you, to be honest. I can't help but when I look at you like on your Facebook lives and this and that, I'm just like, man, this chick has got so much energy, is so incredibly empowered and just inspirational to everyone that you connect with. And it's like your light just radiates. It really truly does. And you're one of those people that if somebody is having a bad day, I'll send them one of your videos. I'm in their inbox sending them one of your videos because I know that whatever it is that you're going to deliver is always something that's going to make people change their perspective a little bit, right? Challenging those perspectives, but you definitely have the ability just to speak light into people and into people's situations. So glad that you're here. And again, my name's Dr. Lori. So I'm kind of on the other side of of this whole spectrum when it as it pertains to sexual trauma. I operate more in the healing space. So back in 2017, I started Still Whole Wellness after working with substance abusers for about 10, almost 15 years. And doing that work with them, just kind of realized that the underlying issue of their substance abuse, more often than not, was sexual trauma. Once we started talking about the sexual trauma, then all of a sudden, their use really kind of dissipated. So once we kind of got to the root of that pain. So I have dedicated myself for the past 5 years with working with this particular population, helping giving them tools and through life coaching, as well as different healing modalities to begin that process of healing from sexual trauma. I myself am a 4-time survivor, so I kind of feel that I'm a good person for the job because I can speak directly to the heart of the person and for the most part, really understand right where they are and meet them there. So super excited to be here. So let's get into it. So tonight we're going to be talking about the family dynamics after disclosure in the Black family. And so we know, again, that this is a topic that it can get a little sticky. It can be even downright scary for some. So I want to just kind of do like we did before, ladies. And, I'm just going to kind of open up with some questions, and you guys feel free to jump in and answer as you feel led to. So my first question would be for you, Dr. Vanessa. How can we normalize the communication how can we normalize communicating to the abuser that are not welcomed in the family? How do we navigate that conversation?
Have it. Have it. So a lot of times we don't talk. We don't want to talk about the difficult conversations. We shy away from it. We actually care about other people's opinion, right? That is the hardest part, is that we care about what other people think. And so we tend not to share our truth. So you got to have the conversation. You can't shy away from it. And it's very, very difficult. It's not easy. But the more you talk about it, the more you show up, the easier it gets. The more practice you have. Like riding a bike. The more you ride the bike, the more practice you have. And so that makes it normal. And every time people are going to get upset, the family unit is going to be upset, and that's okay. The abuser is going to be upset, but who cares? Like, it's not about the abuser. It's about you and how you feel and expressing that. And no, people may not believe you. People may not care. They may talk about you. They may scandalize your name, but it doesn't matter, because you're walking in your truth. And eventually it'll all come together. And you just got to believe in yourself and find that freedom. It's freedom in telling your story. It's freedom in actually standing up for yourself, to take your control back. And after a while, the abuser realized that you're not playing, that you're going to share your story, and it is what it is. So that's what I think. I'm really trying to get away from worrying about what people think about me. That's so difficult. But
Yeah.
do they really matter? They don't. So that's what I think. Talking about it, do it.
Absolutely. How important would you say it is for the survivor to actually, in detail, let's say, talk about the actions of the abuser? Like, is that something that's right up there in terms of importance when you are sharing your story?
I don't think so. I don't think you have to go in detail. I think that you should tell what makes you feel comfortable, what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel grounded. You don't want to be stressed. You don't want to have a breakdown. You don't want to lose control. So you could do it a little bit at a time. Or some people choose to go all in and just tell everything. For me, I don't feel that it's important for me to tell all of my trauma. You know what happened to me, and that's my truth. And I could share a little bit just to give you some ideas, but I've never told everything because I just didn't want to, nor do I have to. So part of sharing your trauma and facing your abuser or facing your family is just doing what you want to do, taking your power back. And even if they ask you questions about it and want to know for details, you don't have to share.
Absolutely.
So I don't think that you have to do it. It's your
Absolutely.
choice. For me, I chose to use poetry to share my story. That worked for me, right? Some people write their story out. Some people record it. You can record on your cell phone, get a recorder, whatever makes you feel comfortable to be able to do it. And share what you want to share. It's your life. Take it back.
I love it. And I agree with you. I think that is like one of the, foundational ways that we can begin to take back that power is by sharing that story and doing it, just as you said, to the degree where we feel comfortable and doing what works for us. One of the things that was most upsetting for me in sharing my story was that there was so many pieces that I couldn't recall, especially because the abuse happened when I was so little. Shirkydra, I'm curious, did you have a similar experience with sharing your story, with maybe some frustration of maybe pieces that you couldn't recollect?
I did. And it was just like Dr. Vanessa said, I when I was even telling my mother, and I was like, you know, based on their response, you're like, do you want me to go deeper for you? Do you really want me to paint that picture or say exactly what happened? But it was more me setting the boundary saying, this is what happened, how, what, who, you know, a lot of those things you don't include in the beginning. But as I talked more about it, as I healed, as I did more, I said more, I talked about it a little bit more. I've been going to therapy, what I share with a therapist or a psychologist, a little bit more as I healed. And one of the first, well, actually the second session of my cognitive behavior therapy with the psychologist, I literally had to spend at least 3 or 4 sections writing out what happened. And when I got a stuck point, writing down, this is a stuck point. And we talked about why there was a stuck point. It was things like saying it out loud where it was just kind of like you, were things you don't remember when you're talking and telling people all the time, but when you start writing it out, and it's like, I didn't even think about that, or that goes with this part of me, and starting to dwindle things back. And one of the things that therapy actually taught me is it wasn't just about the violator, it wasn't just about the person who caused the trauma, it's the people you expected us to protect. You know what I mean? The people you expect to protect you from the trauma that also is part of your healing process.
Absolutely. Now, you bring up a really interesting point when you're talking about, you know, that process for you of actually like going into therapy. Now that, let's just be honest, you know, we all family here.
Yeah.
This is definitely not something that we are used to seeing, although I'm elated that we seem to have kind of had a paradigm shift there where we are starting to see our community starting to be more open to the thought and the idea of kind of inviting someone else in with us on that healing journey. What has that process been like for you, Shirkydra? And I'm curious to know, like, how do we then kind of dismantle some of that judgment that surrounds seeking that professional help?
I think the society needs to see us do it. It was really about when I go and speak and talk, I share that I have a coach, I have my psychologist, I have my therapist, and my mentors. Like, I have people in their lanes that do what they are expected to do for me to be successful. And so it was understanding that we didn't think it was normal because we didn't hear that it was normal. And why it's being normalized is because we're making it normal. We're talking about it. We're saying our experience. We're saying, hey, like I tell people in this book, Dear Brain, my first 2 counselors, I knew after session 2 why they wasn't for me, but I didn't stop because I got to a point where self-healing is not the only form of healing. It's things we can do to get ourselves to a certain place. And then that's when the professionals in different outside entities will come in and help us kind of figure and scrub through some things. So I think it's one, talking about it, which is what we're doing now, is aiming to normalize it. But 2, that stigma is because we have one bad experience and we say therapy is not for me. When really it's, I have trust issues and I didn't open up. And so the therapist could not help me if I'm not ready to really put what I'm there for on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually something that I just wrote about actually in my most recent blog series, you know, just really encouraging clients and just the reader period, you know. Yeah, I agree with you, Shirkydra. There is a certain amount of this that we can do ourselves, you know, but we are going to have those moments where we kind of hit a wall, you know, and it's at those times that, you know, we got to use that wisdom to invite other people into that journey with us. And I wrote in the blog post about the different things to look for, you know, in those different practitioners. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes it really just kind of boils down to allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, which is one of the most challenging things for survivors to do, to be able to let people in so that they can really, really see what's going on inside our hearts and be able to help us to navigate that. Now, Dr. G, I'm, if you're anything like me, there was probably some neglect, perhaps, that you experienced from family on the other side of disclosing, you know, because especially we know in the African American community, it is almost embarrassingly a cultural norm that when this does happen within the family unit, to be quiet about it, to keep it in-house, right? And then when we go against that norm and we do disclose, sometimes, like you said, the families can be upset, and sometimes we can experience some neglect on the other side of that. What would you say to a person who is maybe experiencing that right now?
So I experienced neglect, but it was different. So everybody have like something to say, right? Or the way they mistreat you. I had sisters that were upset that I never disclosed to them, and they were mad, right? That I never disclosed to them. So that was different for me. They were upset that I didn't talk about it. And then I had a family that thought that I was talking about it too much, and it was embarrassment to the family name and the shame, right? Um, I didn't care. I got to the point that when I was ready to walk in my truth, this is what I was ready for. I was ready. And I was surprised about how I was treated and things that were being said about me, and the neglect and like the whispers or the jokes, like, oh, don't say nothing around Vanessa, or, just how they would act. And I just kept pushing because I had more people that cared about me and that was in my corner that was supporting me than the family that did it, if that makes sense. Like I have a whole new family. I have a whole new tribe of people that have experienced trauma that love me. Like I've never met you in Shirkydra, and I'll tell you that I have genuine love for you. So it's okay when the family is not showing up for you because you get a new family.
Yeah.
And so that's how I do it. I find people that's just gonna love and accept me for who I am, and not worry about who doesn't and who don't like it. So I have worked really hard on not caring. And I'm gonna tell you, I say like I don't give a fuck. That's my
There
new
you
saying.
go.
23.
There you go. Yes,
So
ma'am.
hopefully I didn't offend anybody. But you have to keep going, because no matter what you do, it's not going to change how they feel. They still going to have an attitude. They're still going to neglect you. They're still going to have little smart things to say. So you have to do what's best for you and not worry about them. And I think that's important. And sometimes you could try to inform them if they're open to it. But if you see that they're not going to change and they're closed off, why waste their energy? Our energy is so important in life. All we have is our time, money, and energy. Why waste it on somebody that you're not going to convince to believe you? You're not going to convince them to support you. So find you a tribe that will. Like Incest Aware is a tribe that's going to support you and show you love. That's what
right.
you do. You find another family, because obviously this one is not loving and caring and accepting, and they're neglectful. So I don't think it's fair to you. So I say keep moving. Find somebody else that's gonna love you. And it's a lot of us out here. I love you. That's my goal, is to share more love and kindness to somebody who does not receive that on a daily basis.
Absolutely. My experience was much like yours, where I just really actually pretty early on, where I had just a very conscious thought that, okay, you're in this family. You're not the only one, first of all, who's been violated. I actually have like generations. It's a host of aunts, uncles, cousins that have been violated sexually. And no one was talking about it. Even if the abuser was part of the family, nobody was talking about it. It was a very hushed thing. But I kind of made this decision where I said, you know what? This is going to end right here. If nobody else is talking about it, you can neglect me on the other side of this disclosure. But I'm kind of like you, Dr. Vanessa, where I'm like, fuck you. I'm going to talk because I know that there is another young cousin that's coming behind me. I'm going to talk because I know that I have children, and I want my children, to know that this is something that is wrong. And the only way that they're going to know that it's wrong is if someone is talking and speaking up. Shirkydra, I have the same question for you. Like, what was your experience like on the other side of that disclosure with your loved ones? Were you embraced with it? Was there some neglect that was there?
I think I was already used to it. Like before I even said anything, I had already dealt with feeling abandoned and neglect. So it was just like you say it, and of course the emotion that comes with it, like the feeling, it don't stop. We're human. Like, yes, I'm going to feel it from you, but just like Dr. Vanessa said, I told strangers already before I even told my family. So people already knew. I had already tried mentors. Like I had already told strangers before I even told my family. I feel like really my family was the last to find out. It was people who already knew. I had already published my first book. I was like I kind of released it as a ghostwriter through my book of poetry. And so I was already talking about it. I was already sharing it. I was just halfway across the world when I did it. I was in Japan when I published the first book. So it was like those around me knew what I was talking about, knew what I was speaking of. And I had already started my movement. And it was like, okay, right now, I think I was at my healing place where it's like, it's time to say something. And like I tell many other survivors is speak to release, don't speak for a response, because that will fail you. I always had that motto of anytime I talk, anytime I speak to release. And even with Kessa and Kessa's email, sometimes she's like, she apologized, like, oh, I don't want to take you back there. And I'm like, there's no apology needed. Trust me, you're talking to women that are healing, that are doing great things. And if we in this space, you wouldn't have access to us for us to tell you our story. It doesn't bring those negative emotions. Like now we speak with energy, with motivation. It's nothing to be sad about because we realize that we are powerhouses in spite of. So it's like, nah, you want to talk about a story to give you some energy, some motivation? Let's go. I got a story for you. So it comes with that, it more of an excitement to, like Dr. Vanessa said, to give somebody else, we do it to give somebody else hope. It's not about even us anymore. It's literally, we're telling our stories, putting everything on a platform, not just for family to accept it and love it, but it's like, I'm just letting y'all know as a courtesy of what I'm finna do in the world. So you're not looking sideways like you don't know, and they be like, how you don't know that? And that's your family member.
Yeah.
So really, I think coming out to family is a courtesy, but we're already sold out on the movement. We're already like, let's go. All right, the response, you're gonna feel something from it. But most of the time, we've already built our circles and got into the community's Facebook groups, whatever it is that we invest in that keeps us above ground when we have our moments.
Yeah. And I find it really interesting that, I still experience the neglect, just to be, keep it 100. I have family that, they definitely kind of steer clear of me, which is fine because some of their energy is so low that I don't want to be around them no way. But yeah, but there's definitely just that drive is still very much there, and it's just never going to stop. It's never going to stop because I understand just how important it really truly is. Now I'm curious, Shirkydra, did you notice like a definitive shift where, because you mentioned speaking for release and then speaking for, what was the other word you used? Response, which I love. Did you notice like a specific shift there where you kind of could recognize internally that you were speaking for that release versus the response?
Because neglect and abandonment is sometimes the seeds of approval addiction. When you want the approval of people, a lot of that is because you felt abandoned and neglected. So now you're looking for love. What we say, love in the wrong places, And so, of course, I stopped seeking the approval of my family. I saw where I wasn't like saying what they wanted me to say, doing what they wanted me to do, doing anything to make them love me or to feel love from them. That was still, it was like, hey, I'm really just giving y'all a heads up. This is what I'm talking about. This is what's going to be all over the media. And I just don't want you to be, in the blind side. But it was literally, I saw the shift in me because it wasn't a reserve, like Doctor said before, like, what are they going to think? What are they going to say? Do I need to dress it up? Do I need to kind of make people read in between the lines? Can I not be authentic? And the more you talk about it, you see you're authentic, unapologetic. I stopped fearing. Like I used to not fear, but I used to be hesitant of interviews because it's like, what are they going to ask me on this recording? And then it get released. And I used to be so reserved, like, oh, this is going to hurt somebody's feelings. Or I didn't really mention this part because nobody ever asked me that question. And I remember certain first at the beginning interviews where people ask me questions and, I'm a quick responder. But at that time, it was like, how do I dress this up or filter this? And once that stopped, it was like, oh, it's go time. So it definitely an internal shift when you stop worrying about what everybody else thinks.
Now you were polite. You were polite. Yeah. You gave an announcement. I didn't give no announcement. I just started working. I'm kind of impulsive that way. Like I just went in 10 toes down, full steam ahead, wasn't gonna stop. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was definitely no announcement. They just kind of looked around like, wait, Lori started a business and she's doing what? So kudos to you for that, because that is, yeah, definitely not a step that I took. Um, now, Dr. Guyton, I know you have your amazing, super handsome grandson, and I know you have other grandkids too, but we always see your daughter's son on social media. How do you talk to him about, or maybe even your daughter, about not forcing him to like embrace certain family members, because you guys know how this kind of works. You go to a family function and it's like, oh, go hug cousin so and so, go give auntie so and so a kiss, and this kind of stuff. And we weren't taught that we could be in opposition to that, or give any sort of protest. How do you kind of handle that with your own family?
So for me, it started with my own children. You're referencing Braylon, and I'm going to get to Braylon because that's very interesting on how I work with him on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew what my family was. My grandmother had 22 kids.
Whew.
So there were a lot of people in my house. A lot of my uncles were on drugs, a lot of alcoholics. And so my children never stayed at my grandmother's house. And I took a lot of flack for it because they would say things like, you think your children are all that? They're not better than, or you let them do whatever they want to do. Because if they didn't want to stay, they never had a chance. They didn't have to stay. If they didn't want to hug, they didn't have to, because I didn't like some of my family members either. So why make my children like somebody? And I think that are a very good judge of character. So my children did not experience that because I really paid attention to my surroundings. So I poured that into my kids. You have the right to say no. I've always told my kids that you can verbalize it. And I did that because I never was able to talk. I never was able to ask questions because it was being disrespectful. You can't talk back. I'm like, I'm not talking back. I'm just asking a question. And I was not allowed to. So I allowed my children to ask questions. So I did something totally different than what was allowed for me. Then when I had grandchildren, I started learning more because I became an advocate. So it was, I'm kicking this to the next level. So where we're changing the diaper, nobody's supposed to touch you here. This is your special place. Daddy loves you. Gigi loves you. And so I believe it starts in the diaper. Like when you're changing the diaper, that is real good quality time. And I believe that children hear that, and you tell them that they're beautiful and that they have choices and a voice, right? And then as they start growing, the conversations get a little bit bigger. And I'm saying vagina, I'm saying penis. Like we weren't to say that.
Absolutely.
Right? I'm saying those words. I'm teaching my children the body parts, right? So I'm going against everything that I was ever taught, but it's okay. And I took my grandson to the doctor. He was like 8, right? And he was just there. We were doing a physical, and the doctor was like, you got to take your clothes off. So my grandson was like, no, thank you. Right? He's very, very polite. And the doctor's like, no, thank you. He's like, no, thank you. I don't want to take my clothes off. So the doctor said, you have to take your clothes off. So he was like, I don't want to take my clothes off. My mommy said, I have a voice and I have a choice, and I choose not to take my clothes off. So I'm looking like, okay, this is good, right?
We're love good. This.
All right.
I love it.
So then the doctor said, well, we got to take your clothes off. I got to, check you out. And he said it again. So the doctor looking at me, and I'm like, I'm just a grandma, like, but okay, let me do this. I said, well, Brandon, you got to take your clothes off. He was like, no, Gigi, no. I have a voice and I have a choice, and I choose not to take my clothes off. So essentially I was like, where you have to, like, this is a space, and he didn't get it, right? So in that moment, I'm like, something is wrong. Like, we didn't teach it right. There was an error here, because it wasn't like, these are the spaces that you can do it with. If mommy with you, daddy with you, grandma with you, it's okay. We didn't really have the real good conversation. It was just like, you got a voice, and you could choose not to do it. So he essentially was screaming and yelling in the doctor's office. I was so freaking embarrassed. When I got there, I was sweating. Like, we literally had to like lift his shirt up. The doctor like real quickly pulled his pants down, because he was like, well, has anybody touched you? Is it the reason why you don't want us? So then he looking at me, and I'm like, no, it's just, this is what we do. Our children, So I got outside. I told my daughter, I said, well, first of all, I'm never taking your son to the doctor again, ever. But we have to have better conversations. Yeah. So now I tell that story when I'm training, that you have to have like situational conversations with your children. If they're at school, this is some things that can happen. If they're at the babysitter, these are some things that can happen. So you really have to talk about location and circumstances when you're talking about this. And so that's how I've changed the story of, you know, if you're at school, the teacher shouldn't take your clothes off at school, right? You have the right to say no if you feel uncomfortable. And that's how we do it. And it's just evolved. And I know, like with my younger grandchildren, that conversation will be situational.
Yeah. I love that. Because you said it early, like it's something that we just simply weren't taught, and our voice was absolutely taken away from us. We were taught as kids that when grown folks tell you to do something, you might want to find yourself doing it. you know. I had a similar situation with my daughter, and it's so interesting because this process is like I just as disturbing as it is that we even have to do this, I find it also beautiful at the same time, because as I go along, there's just so many things that I learn along the process. And so I was kind of like you, where it wasn't a complete conversation, where she understood the places where it was appropriate, to have people looking at her and things of that nature. So a similar situation. But because my mom had a family member who was her accuser, and my mom always refused to tell me who that person was, I was always just like super, super on edge, whenever we were around family. And so, I did have that conversation with my girls and letting them know, hey, if Uncle so-and-so asks you for a hug and you don't want to hug him, I might be embarrassed in the moment, just because of training and, the rearing that I received. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. And my little one, good Lord, she's like your Braylon. She is very, very outspoken. And she immediately piped up and she was like, I don't want to hug you, Uncle so-and-so. You don't want to hug me? No, I don't. No, I really don't. And I was super, super embarrassed. But at the same time, I was very proud of her that she used her voice, in the way that she was encouraged to do. But it was definitely an embarrassing kind of a situation, kind of a moment. Shirkydra, what are your thoughts with that? Have you had a similar experience?
I think just like Dr. Vanessa said, that when I'm ready to have kids, it's going to be not sugarcoating the language and teaching our kids to have a voice. Because I grew up, I tell people all the time, my mom was like, what goes on in this house, stay in this house.
Mm-hmm.
It was very big on like, stay out of adult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Stay out of adult conversations. And so you get into that and it's like, well, do I say something? Do I tell her? What do I do? And no fault to my mom. She was introduced to that lifestyle as well. That was what she was doing. So it was different when it comes to having a voice and figuring out what does that voice look like? Because I don't want to just have a voice when I'm happy, like when I'm upset, when I'm sad. I think in my second book I talked about, I wish when I grew up, it was like learn how to cry and it's okay. Be emotional and it's okay. Express myself and not worry about what's the response. What is going to be the response? Is it going to be anger? Is it going to be a problem? Is it going to be an issue? Is it going to be, not belief? So for me, it's about having a conversation, learning it the right way, but not sugarcoating the language. I want my kids to know exactly what is what and the boundaries they need to set for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I even got to a point where, once I kind of went through that whole reparenting deal with the girls, uh, going almost to the other extreme of asking them, can mommy hug you? Can mommy give you a kiss? Is it okay if mommy comes in the bathroom with you? Partly wanting to get them used to, again, kind of using that voice, but also there were some moments where it was just like, okay, Lord, you're going too far. You need to calm down. Uh, but definitely, I feel like it was a good kind of foundation for them to be able to build on. And I'm telling y'all, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, because when I tell y'all, I got two mouthy ones over here. Bless Lord. They are very mouthy. Now, Shirkydra, I'm curious to know if family is a trigger for you.
No more, not anymore. before I did have my season where it was the trigger. It was like, I would talk to my family and be angry. And I'd be like, why are you like, what? Where's this anger coming from? What are you mad for? And it was based on when I told the response or the expectation or the need or what I wanted them to do, and I wasn't voicing it enough. So before, yes, they were a trigger. My family would call and I would not pick up. It was just like, I saw the phone ring and it would be people I'm around and they'll be like, your whole mood changes. My whole, like, you just see it, you can't hide it anymore. And it was just like, okay, what is this phone call about? You know, what I don't feel like talking. I don't feel like faking it, especially before I said anything to people. It was like, nobody realizes that I'm screaming inside, so I don't want to put on a front. I don't feel like picking up the phone to put on a front. It was much of a trigger, but now, no, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're hitting on something really key there, you know, and it's something, a tool that I employ even to this day. And that is when my phone rings, I'm doing my little quick internal assessment.
Yeah.
Especially depending on the person that is calling. I take that moment and I just kind of do an assessment of myself to like determine, do I really want to deal with whatever is going to be on the other side of this phone call? You know, am I in the right headspace, and do I have the bandwidth to be able to emotionally handle whatever might be the result of such a phone call? Dr. G, I'll ask the same question to you. Is family a trigger for you at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay, what was that process like for you?
I have decided that, like I said at the beginning, their opinion does not matter. Your opinion on my life has no purpose, no reason, no significance or value to me. So, and if I even see that they're trying to go down that path, I just shut it off, or I change the subject, or I don't answer. And so I've set the boundaries. And I didn't really understand what setting boundaries was. People say set boundaries, but that looks different for everyone. So my boundaries are, I don't have to answer the phone. Like you said, you don't. I don't have to go to the family reunion. I don't have to go to the dinner. If I'm not in that space, I'm just not in that space, and be okay with that. So my family is no longer a trigger for me because I just don't do it. And if I think I'm going to be uncomfortable, then I'm not going. I don't have to go. And you're not going to make me feel guilty, because people will try to put this guilt on you and make you seem like you're wrong. But
when I call,
What'd you say, Kedra?
When they be like, why you didn't answer what I called? Or was you busy earlier? Like, I just didn't pick up the phone. We get that obligation, and I think it has to do with trauma. A lot of people who experience trauma feel like, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. What if they need me? Right. What if, you know what I'm saying? It's the moment where they need somebody and they called me and I don't answer. Like, you wear a cape 24/7. Until you learn that you don't have to wear a cape 24/7, because it's not what we were created to do. I don't have to answer the phone. I don't care how somebody feels. I can be doing nothing, but if I'm not emotionally ready for whatever's on the other side of this phone, I'm just not gonna do it. I'm not even gonna put myself through it.
Kedra, try having a family that knows that you work in mental health, you're a life coach, you've been a therapist.
Oh yeah.
Girl, my phone stays blowing up with everybody wanting to hit me up about their problems. And, you know, I have definitely learned to have appropriate boundaries, especially if I have had a day that has been particularly emotionally weighted, you know, with seeing clients all day. Yeah, if there's especially there's specific people in my family that if I see their name come across my phone, I'm like, nope, I already know I can't with you today, because I already know it's gonna be something low vibrational that I simply can't. I just can't do it. And that is a tough one, but you know, establishing those boundaries is highly important. And I think we kind of learn that and perfect that as we kind of go along. Okay, so I want to kind of just switch gears just a little bit and talk about just a little bit more about disclosing to our family members, and just kind of considering some of the boundaries that we might have during, we mentioned a moment ago, having, you know, family reunions. And if your family is anything like mine, my family finds pretty much any excuse to celebrate. There's always, you know, something going on, some birthday, anniversary, they find every reason in the book to party. So how do we handle these family gatherings and the boundaries kind of surrounding that?
I think Dr. Vanessa said it earlier. It's you get to a point where I don't have to go. To be honest, I've never been to a family reunion, a big family gathering. I've never. It's been like when you get out of that stage where I don't want to wear a mask, I don't want to put on anything or fake choose when I go. I get to choose when I leave. If I show up and I feel like the energy is bad, it's almost like you give yourself permission to chunk up the deuces. And you don't know. I mean, you have some people that ask, hey, is this person gonna be there? Is this person gonna be there? And sometimes it's just you show up and be like, not the energy for me. All right, good seeing everybody and not feeling guilty about it.
Mm-hmm. And bounce.
Bounce, roll out, me and my homie.
Absolutely. And Dr. Vanessa, I'll pose the same question to you. How did you kind of navigate those family gathering boundaries? What is that like for you?
So I have a very big family, right? Very big family.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, they like to talk to me. So
Okay.
I pick and choose. I can pick and choose who I want to stand there and have a conversation with. I can pick and choose who I would like to sit by. I can move, right? I could leave. I never let nobody drive me. I'm always drive, right? That's one of the things, that's setting boundaries, that I'm be able to leave when I get ready to leave. And so it's my choice. And what gets me upset is when I fight against what I want to do. I get very disappointed in myself when I allow myself to be drawn in by my family and not set the boundaries. And so I don't want to be mad at myself. I don't want to be upset. I don't want to be depressed. I just want to love me. And loving me is putting myself first. And I believe in our society and our family unit, we're taught to do for everybody else. You do for your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sister. I'm the oldest of 6. So I'm responsible for everybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not fair. Even as a parent, we have to put our children first. That's not right. You have to put yourself first, your needs, your desires, your wants first, so that you can show up happy and whole for the rest of the family. And so if I'm not putting myself first, I can't show up how I need to be. And that's not fair to me. And so that's how I deal with family. What do I want? Not what do they want? And that's in every situation. That's even in borrowing money. That's if they want to come visit. If I'm not in that space, then I can't have company right now. And they have to be okay with it. Now, they may be mad, but they'll get over it. And if they don't, oh well. And I have been talking to a lot of women, especially, that we put ourselves last, and that's not fair. We've been conditioned to do that, and that is wrong. You have to put yourself first. And like on Mondays is my self-care. If it is an event on Mondays, I don't have to go because that is my self-care day, right? The other day I put on Facebook that I was cutting my phone off from the hours of 12 to 2. I actually kept it off from 12 to 3. And I know people got upset, but I felt so much better, and I was proud of myself for finally putting myself first. And so that's how I do it with my family. And if you get upset for me putting myself first, I don't know what to tell you, because at least I do. Put yourself first. You should put yourself first.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna tell you. Put yourself first, because that's what I'm gonna do. Because that's how I could show up and be in that space.
Yeah. Yeah, I've certainly, I'm a lot like you, Dr. Vanessa. My family is ginormous. My dad has like 7, 8 brothers and sisters. My mom's got like 5, 6 brothers and sisters. Just a huge, huge family. And I've definitely had to kind of set those boundaries as well. I was really, really proud of myself. I think it was last summer actually, where I found out that one of my accusers, who happens to be a family member, was going to be at the family reunion for the first time in several years. After the family found out, about his assault against me and some other indiscretions that he had done, they had kind of ousted him for a number of years, and he was living somewhere we didn't even know where he was. And some kind of way, he just kind of got reacclimated into the family. So last year he was showing up to the reunion. I very promptly drafted up a little statement, sent it to him. I think I sent it like through Instagram Messenger, just basically letting him know I'm not going to miss out on time with my family just because you are also choosing to not miss out on time with your family as well. I'm going to be there. Here are the boundaries. Don't speak to me. We're going to be at a huge park. There is no reason for us to ever converse, be around each other. Don't speak to my children. My children know exactly who you are. They know exactly what you did, and they have no interest at all with having any connection with you. And then I blocked him. I literally sent the message and I blocked him. And I was really proud of myself for doing that because the reunion went just fine. He actually really respected my wishes. He never spoke to me, never spoke to my children. I kept checking in with my girls. Hey, you good? You good? They were fine. And it was a beautiful day. So yeah, I definitely understand, being able to set those healthy boundaries with family members. It is super important. It's super, super important. So we've kind of talked about a lot of stuff today. We've talked a lot about a lot of stuff today, talking about the boundaries, how to be able to help our children to feel safe and empowering them to have a voice. We've kind of talked about some of the judgments, that we've experienced from our families, some of that neglect that happens on the other side of disclosure. Is there anything else that you ladies would like to touch on before we get out of here today?
I heard you say that you had a hard time recalling what happened to you because you were a child. And a lot of times we have hard times, no matter what age we are. And I think it helps to understand the brain. So I couldn't remember. I had suppressed my memory for like 17 years. I literally did not remember a lot of trauma. And so I had to figure out why, because people feel like you're lying or they have like all these judgments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding the limbic system and that your brain will shut down the memories because of what it does to you. So stress, your heart rate might go up, your blood pressure, you might be nervous, anxiety, and
Mm-hmm.
your brain is like ding, 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 ding. This memory is causing that and it's disrupting the entire body. So I'm going to remove that from this individual so that she can carry on and be healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just understanding the brain and how the brain works is that it's not that it never happened to you. It's not that, you know, it's nothing negative. It's just reality. It's the makeup of the body. And to understand that and that we have to get that out to the community that if a person doesn't remember, if they can't recall everything, I still can't recall everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I'm okay. I'm able to heal without recalling, but letting people understand that this is a real thing and that this is what the brain does. And this is the part of the brain. And understanding that, I think that helps our community to understand what happens during trauma and why
Mm-hmm.
we can't always recall or why we don't say anything. So just
Yeah.
sharing in the community to change the outlook of a lapse of memory or memory suppression or repression, either way you want to call it. I say call it what you want to call it
Mm-hmm.
because it's your life and your trauma. So name it what you want to name it. But it's important to let people know that this is a real thing, and I do my best to let people understand that.
Yeah, it really is a real thing. I remember, just again, this whole healing journey is definitely not linear by any means. It's just so many peaks and valleys. But I remember like early on, I was so hard on myself and I was so mad and angry with myself because for me it was an awareness like here's this big ginormous thing that happened in my life and I can't recall it all. It was all just kind of coming to me like in these almost like snapshots is what I call it in my book. And I was so frustrated because I wanted to be able to remember it all because I knew it was having such a tremendous effect on all the different aspects of my life. So I'm like, why can't I remember everything? But here's what I think I've kind of learned with that. Once I, started getting just a little bit further, into the healing process, those memories really started to come back. They were clearer, they were fuller. And what I've kind of just resolved within my spirit is that my brain kind of protected me from myself.
Mhm.
Because at the beginning of intentionally healing, I was in the middle of a very huge nervous breakdown. Like I was literally having like a psychotic break. And I can just only imagine had I been able to recall all of those things in that moment, what that would have done to me. I can't even say that I would even be sitting here with you all today. So I kind of feel like my brain protected me from me, and now that I've kind of gotten to a better space with all of it, now I'm beginning to have, more clear memories and being able to recollect things, even in sequence, which I think is really interesting. Um, Any closing thoughts for you, Shirkydra, before we open it up for a question and answer?
I think out of this entire conversation, kind of the big takeaway for me is when you're telling your story is yours to own. You don't have to even worry about what people feel about it, because everything that we talk about today goes back to worrying how people feel about our story, our emotions from our story, our response to our story, how we share our story, how we feel about the person and the people that are part of our story. Like, you get to a point where it doesn't matter how people feel. It doesn't matter how people see it. It doesn't matter who's on board, off board, on the sideboard, who running with you one day, not running with you the next day. At the end of the day, every single day, we own our story. And when you speak and talk and share and have conversations, knowing that, it's like, I don't have to overexert my brain trying to filter through, or overexert my brain to try to help people understand. It becomes fluent. And we always talk about unapologetic and authenticity and all these things. That comes with no effort. You just allow your story and your life to flow to however you want it to be, and don't worry about who got something to say or not say about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I do actually have a quick question for you ladies, because I'm just curious of your response. Do you find it at all challenging to tell your story without telling other people's story simultaneously?
Mhm.
Yeah. In what
I
way?
do. And only because my siblings experienced things that I did as well. Different people, but sometimes it's like, part of my story comes from hurting people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to be like, it's not my job to tell your portion of the story. All I can tell is what my story is. And
Mm-hmm.
if y'all ever, or you ever want to tell what happened to you or how it happened to you or whatever the case may be, that's on you. And if that helps people better understand, sure. But at the end of the day, I only can tell what impacted me and how it impacted me, who was involved with it. But yes,
Yeah.
at first it's like, because most of us it was family. So you're like,
Yeah.
reserve.
Yeah. Yeah. I was always super, I don't know if Dr. Guyton remembers the first time that I was on the Hush No More StreamYard show. I was like super guarded, like did not know exactly like what I really wanted to say. And it was for that very thing right there. I was just very cautious and cognizant of making sure to tell my story
Yeah,
and
in
to
my
not allow it, to bleed over into someone else's. Dr. G, do you have that challenge at all?
I do, but the challenge for me is for my children.
Mm,
So, because my story affects my children and my ex-husband, right? Because it's part of my mental health, what I with my addiction, that's part with my children. And so what I did was talk to them about it. And I said, look, I'm about to start talking, sharing stories. Do you mind if I share this story? Would this bother you? I was just open about it and talk to them about it. And so they gave me buy-in. And so I share and I share stories about the relationships with my kids and how I had to apologize to my kids for my mental health and addiction and things that I really couldn't control, but I felt like I owed them apology. And so I share our story as a family, and I'm okay with it now. But I made sure I discussed that with them first. And if they would have said no, I would not have. Right, I would have
yeah.
stuck right to mine. But they're okay with it, and actually, our family story helps other families as well. And
Yeah.
my daughter even has started talking more about our family unit from a healing perspective, because all of us are affected, right? And so I did have that, but I don't now.
Yeah. I think the only space for me with that has been having the conversation specifically with the girls that as I heal, this thing might look a little different. As I heal, the story may sound different to you. And just kind of setting that statement out there just so they could, understand what was happening. But these two over here, they have always been just super, super supportive. I'm very, very fortunate and blessed that, they understand the importance of the work that mommy does. And so they've always been super open to allowing me to just kind of do my thing. So I do see that we have, I'm going to actually go ahead and stop recording unless there's anything else that you ladies want to share. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you guys for joining the second installment of the Outspoken series. Be on the lookout for the third conversation. You can go to Incest Aware to get the information about that upcoming conversation. Until we meet again, be well and in perfect peace.